Welcome back. You're watching our special show, Eye on India, and we're discussing the implications of the new bankruptcy proceedings on corporate India. Shalto Shroff, let's talk about the infrastructure challenge as well. We talked about the legal impediments, but how prepared is the system for the deluge of cases that it's probably going to have to deal with?
Frankly, I don't see the deluge yet, and the system has coped so far, in the sense that the proceedings are moving pretty quickly. There are no long delays in relation to hearings of matters. So there is today adequate response to the filings. Yes, if the matters move up to, say, 500 filings, 600 filings, then there will be a delusion. You will have to have many more tribunals look at these issues. But so far, I think the process has been managed quite well.
Okay, so far, so good. But do you foresee this as being a challenge, the infrastructure impediment at all?
So far, so good. In future, I think we will be. Because we're talking about 12 cases now, and we have so many of them. We're going to have 55
the second
more
and the third list, according to the government, is already been prepared.
Clearly there needs to be an expansion, especially given that there is a tight time frame and the essence of the law is to clear it within the right time. Otherwise, frankly, India has enough long-dated cases to go on for years. So in that case, but in this particular case, because essence is, time is of essence, I think it's important.
Mr. Srivastav, and this is a question that a lot of people have asked us here on CNBC TV 18, that look, over the last decade, you've had several schemes. You've had the CDR, you've had the SDR, you've had the sustainable structuring of stressed assets, the S4A, but none of them have actually been successful. So why should we believe that this is going to be any different?
One, you see, each of these S4A or SDR or CDRs had actually required a lot of collaboration amongst all the stakeholders. But given that the fact that this is now going to have the force of the law behind it, perhaps bankers would be encouraged to make use of the system, and it's more fair and more transparent to everybody. So there, in the CDR or the SDR, it was the JLF which was deciding and taking a decision on the haircuts. Here, perhaps the bankers would be encouraged to take the matter to the NCLT, where it will be decided in a transparent manner by a committee of creditors and approved by the NCLT bench as to what is a sustainable level of debt that can be carried and who should be actually carrying this debt going forward. So that transparency and that
that's the positive.
Is that stamp of. That's the positive, yes.
So that's the positive, because you get the cover of law, so to speak. But what would you see as the big challenges going forward?
See, the big challenge going forward definitely would be that, one, we have varying provisions and varying time norms for, in various schemes that we have. So I guess going forward there would be a sunset for all these forbearances and everything would be referred to the NCLT. By which time perhaps the NCLT institution would be, on a more firm footing, so to say. So yes, during this period, while the institution is being set up, where the act is being tested, precedences are being created, we have to be patient. But I am sure this is the way forward, as it has been seen in most of the countries, where you have very definitive bankruptcy laws. We had several, but they were too disaggregated and being referenced to various courts. So here at least we have one act which takes care of all these things. But these will be refined as we go along. It's not the finality. In fact, in the US also, perhaps the Bankruptcy Act started in 1800s and is still going a process of revision. So I'm sure Shardul will be able to throw better light on this, on the legal aspects.
Yeah.
But yes,
In fact, I'll get Shardul to comment on that. The refinement that's required. Nitin, just to take that point forward, and then I'll get Mr. Shroff to respond as well. In your experience now, and you were talking about some of the turnaround stories that you've been working with. Balarpur was one example that you shared with us on the show. What kind of refinements would you now like to see from here on as this process plays out?
See, first of all, let me just make a small comment on what we just discussed a couple of minutes back. I think to say that SARFAESI and the other previous initiatives on bankruptcy have not been successful, I think might be slightly unfair. They are definitely not as successful as we would have liked them to be, but I think we have moved a long distance over the last 15, 20 years. Today, I think the entire credit infrastructure has improved dramatically vis-a-vis, let's say, the late 90s and the early 2000s. And I think SARFAESI has played a reasonably important role in the process. And I think this entire bankruptcy code, if you ask me, is probably one of the most thoughtful and one of the most comprehensive laws that at least I have come across in the entire bankruptcy space, not only in India, but globally. It's something that I think we have to give a lot of credit to people who have been instrumental in defining this law. Of course, it has to take its own sweet time to mature, and I would be surprised if things stabilize in less than 2-3 years. But what else could you have asked for? If you ask me, today when you talk to promoters, when you talk to bondholders, I think most of them are reasonably confident that it's a fair process, it's a time-bound process, and one big thing that it allows us to participate in these processes is the fact that people are forced to take decisions together. I think somewhere we were talking about it, why would interest come in? One of the biggest challenges that we have faced in the process earlier was that there were 18 to 20 banks, and I think everybody had a different agenda and different objectives to achieve. And to buy out debt from everybody was such a big task. It took us 2 to 3 years for us to get to a place where we could drive decision making. Today, within the first 3 months, you are practically in a position where you are clear that whether all the lenders are together on a particular issue or not. And if they are, I think that provides a lot of clarity to potential investors like us.
You're absolutely right on that front. We've got just enough time for wrap-up comments, so let me start by asking you, Shardul Shroff, how does this change the landscape, and what do you see as the result of all of this action that we've seen over the next, say, 12 months?
I think in terms of financial discipline and as a law, this is an extremely good law. There will always, as I said, be people who want to challenge it because they want to subvert the process, but that's a part of any democracy. So I think in the long run, this is a very good law. It will turn around assets, it will get better management into position, and there will be a streamlining. There may be a need of capitalization in the banks but all that is for the good. Rather than having a dead asset which doesn't function, this will at least bring in new capital and people who are new managers.
Abhisar?
So you finally think about reviving rather than just providing. So this law actually enables more capital, as Shardul just said. The other important thing is we'll see a dilution of promoter shareholdings going forward. So in India, which saw 100% promoter shareholdings come down to 75%, will come down to 30 and 40%. So promoters will need to learn to run companies with 40% and hence with more governance. I think that's what I see.
Learn to run them better. Mr. Srivastava, I'll give you, the banker, the final say on the program, sir.
I would be feeling very encouraged because it will set in place systems which will enforce credit discipline amongst borrowers, who will then be enjoined to adhere to certain norms for repayment of debt and servicing of interest and avoiding the situation of getting into financial distress. So that perhaps be leading to more prudential management with more professionalism, and maybe, as Abhisar mentioned, with the promoters diluting their stake further and getting more transparency in, more corporate governance perhaps.
Well, gentlemen, we hope that that is certainly the order of the day: prudence, professionalism and better governance. And we hope that this law will ensure not just that, but will ensure that the 10 lakh crore rupee burden on the Indian economy by way of NPAs starts now to be resolved. But thank you very much for joining us here on this CNBC TV 18 special. Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you again. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.